Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode. To the next part. So this is the American Revolution. Passage of the Stamp Act, March 22nd, 1765. Britain passes the Stamp Act, imposing a tax on legal documents, newspapers, and playing cards. This is the first direct tax on the American colonists and is hotly resisted. A successful American campaign to have the act repealed will give Americans confidence that they can avoid future tax as well. October 1768, British troops occupy Boston. The British troops land in Boston to enforce the townshend duties and clamp down on local radicals. The troops' presence doesn't sit well with the locals and leads to street fights. One clash between soldiers and a mob in March 1770 will lead to 5 deaths. Radicals will call it the Boston Massacre. Spring 1772, committees of correspondence are established throughout the colonies to coordinate American response to British colonial policy. This represents an important move toward cooperation, mutual action, and the development of national identity among Americans. March to June 1774. The British Parliament passes the Coercive Acts, often called the Intolerable Acts in America. Among other actions, Britain closes the port of Boston and requires British troops to be housed in taverns and vacant buildings. The acts generate considerable sympathy for Massachusetts amongst the colonies. On April 19, 1775, the war breaks out. The first shots of the Revolutionary War are fired at Lexington and Concord in Massachusetts. The news of the bloodshed rockets along the eastern seaboard, and thousands of volunteers converge, called the Minutemen, on Cambridge, Massachusetts. These are the beginnings of the Continental Army. November 1775, the British governor of Virginia, Lord Dunmore, issues a proclamation offering freedom to any slaves of rebellious Americans who are able to enter British lines. Throughout the course of the war, tens of thousands of African Americans will seek their freedom by supporting the British. A small number will fight on the Patriot side, despite policies that discourage their enlistment. June 17, 1775, the first major actions of the war, inexperienced colonial soldiers hold off hardened British veterans for more than 2 hours at Breed's Hill. Although eventually forced to abandon their position, including the high ground of Bunker Hill overlooking Boston, the Patriots show that they are not intimidated by the long lines of redcoat infantrymen. Of the 2,200 British seeing action, more than 100,000 end up dead or wounded. February 27, 1776, a force of loyalists, most of them of Scots descent, is defeated by a Patriot army at the Battle of Morse Creek Bridge. This setback will largely quiet loyalist activity in the Carolinas for 3 years. June 28, 1776, the British invasion force mounts on mounts an all-day attack on a Patriot force in Sullivan's Island. The invaders are unable to land their troops on the island, and the tricky waters of Charleston Harbor frustrate the British Navy. The fleet retires in defeat, and South Carolina will remain untouched by the enemy for 3 more years. On July 1776, the Declaration of Independence is adopted by the Second Continental Congress. Following a decade of agitation over taxes and the year of war, representatives make the break with Britain. King George III isn't willing to let his subjects go without a fight, and loyalist sentiment remains strong in many areas. Americans' primary allegiance is to their estates. Nationalism will grow slowly. December 1776 to January 1777. In a bold move, Washington moves his troops into New Jersey on Christmas night. The Patriots then surprise a force of German troops fighting for Britain at Trenton on December 26th. They achieve a similar victory over British troops at Princeton on January 3rd, reviving hopes that the war might be winnable. The army then encamps for the winter at Morristown, New Jersey. August 1777, American Fort Schuyler survives a 3-week-long siege, forcing Allied British forces under Leger to retreat. Their goal of securing the Mohawk Valley for General Burgoyne fails. American Colonel Peter Gainsford and the fort's garrison are commended by the Continental Congress for their efforts. October 17, 1776, General John's attempt to separate the rebellious New England colonies from those farther south ends in a spectacular failure. The surrender of 6,000 British regulars at Saratoga will shock London and help induce France to enter the war on the American side. December 1777, the British occupy Philadelphia, just 20 miles away. The Continental Army enters winter quarters at Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. During the winter, supply arrangements will be improved and the Continental troops will be drilled and emerge as a more disciplined, unified fighting force. February 1778, as a result of the Patriot victory at Saratoga and diplomatic efforts, France allies itself with the new American government. French financial and military aid will prove crucial in winning the war. The Continental Army will learn of the French alliance in May. May to December 1778, with barely 150 men, Virginia George Rogers Clark captures several British posts in the Ohio Territory and convinces French-speaking inhabitants of Kaskaskia and Cahokia to support the Patriot side. Although Indians will continue to oppose white settlement for 3 decades, Clark's exploits paved the way for the expansion of the U.S. north of the Ohio River. May 12, 1880, the British take Charleston, South Carolina, capturing a large Patriot army, and deal the rebels one of the worst defeats of the war. The Charleston move is part of a broader British strategy to hang on to the southern colonies, at least now that the war is stalemated in Pennsylvania and New York. October 7th, 1780, Patriot militia from the Carolinas, Virginia, and present-day Tennessee surround and defeat a force of Loyalists under Major Patrick Ferguson at Kings Mountain, South Carolina, indicating a deep division within America. Ferguson is the only British soldier on the field. Kings Mountain is truly a battle among Americans about their future. January 17, 1781, Continental soldiers and Patriot militia under General Daniel Morgan defeat a British force under Bannistry Tarleton at Cowpens. Coming on the heels of the victory at Kings Mountain, Cowpens helps convince worried patriots that the British southern strategy can be countered. March 15th, 1781, British troops will win a costly victory over Continentals and militia at Guilford Courthouse, North Carolina. The battle is part of General Nathanael Greene's strategy of engaging the British on the ground of his choosing. Without winning a single clear-cut victory, he will succeed in wearing down the British army through hit-and-run tactics and set-piece battles. May to June 1781, the isolated British garrison at 96 is laid siege to by Patriot forces under General Nathanael Greene. The approach of a British relief column leads Greene to make a final unsuccessful assault on the fort on June 18th. The events at 96 underline the fact that Britain has too few troops to hold the southern hinterlands. September to October 1781, a French and American force traps a large British army on Virginia's Yorktown Peninsula. Unable to evacuate or receive reinforcements because a French fleet has driven off a British fleet, General Cornwallis is forced to surrender. Although New York City and Charleston, South Carolina, will remain in British hands until a peace treaty is signed 2 years later, the war for American independence is essentially over. January 1782, the evacuation of Loyalists begins. Largely unwelcome in the new United States, about 100,000 Americans who remained loyal to the Crown find new lives in Britain, Canada, and British colonies in the West Indies. Among them were about 15,000 African Americans, some of whom end up helping to found the country of Sierra Leone in Africa. The Loyalist experience will have a profound effect on the development of Canada's national identity. September 1783, The Treaty of Paris ratifies the independence of the 13 North American states. Canada remains a British province, beginning its separate development as a U.S. neighbor. Another war with England will be necessary to truly secure the American nation. October 1784, the Treaty of Fort Santwix imposes a peace on those members of the Iroquois Confederacy that side with the British in the Revolution. The war's aftermath will prove devastating to Native Americans. With no European allies to rely on, Indian tribes will be under increasing pressure from settlers moving west out of their original 13 states. 1787, the Conventional States in Philadelphia proposes the Constitution to replace the much looser central government operating under the Articles of Confederation. With amendments, the Constitution remains the framework of government in the United States. And that's the American Revolution. Thank you all for watching, and see you on the next one. Good night.